Well, welcome everybody. We're excited to be here. Is anyone tired yet? Yeah. Anyone's brain hurt yet? Okay. I always say it's not a good conference if your brain doesn't hurt by the end, so I think we're doing okay. I am very excited to be able to sit with these two gentlemen today. We were also supposed to have another person on the panel. Unfortunately, they weren't able to come due to some COVID complications. But we're here today, and this is really a time that we're going to be talking pretty casually. And we want you to get involved in it too. So please don't hesitate with your questions. We don't have to wait to the end. We want to just share things that are working for us and what we've seen work for other people, and really try to answer that question of how do I become the most profitable business that I can be. So I'm just going to start right off the bat with, how do you measure profitability for your business? How do you even figure out if your business is profitable?
Those of you here for the prior session, the opening act called Terry Hammer, you got a nice detailed review of fixed and variable costs. And I believe this session is a good add-on to what Terry is going over the first time. Actually, I haven't sat in a room to hear him speak, and it was exactly as what I expected. So to your question, Scott, of how do we calculate break-even? We never really calculated break-even, so when we came in, the place we bought was a very low occupancy with a lot of potential, and they were making money. So we knew we would make money. What we focused more, which is exactly what Terry was talking about, was understanding our fixed and variable costs. I have an undergrad in accounting and MBA in marketing, so I have this constant push and pull in my brain, but pretty quickly figured out this was a high fixed cost operation and a relatively low variable cost operation. So it told me two things. Some amount of volume is good, although in the later years that have gone on, I've learned that volume and price are a trade-off. You don't necessarily have to be at high occupancy necessary to make revenue and maximize revenue. At the same time, in the off-season, knowing your variable cost was also instructed to know how much you could discount to get to and still make plenty of money to cover your fixed costs. So we never really calculated it, and really what we say is we focus on the guest experience first and delivering all the stuff the guest expects at a price that fits what's happening in the market, and the profits will follow.
Yeah, I think that's a great. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, good. My mic was on. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Marty. Yes, sir.
I think the question was, how do you measure profitability?
We're skipping around to some break-even stuff as well, but I'm going to circle back around. Don't worry.
Well, the short answer is QuickBooks.
So I think fixed and variable costs, depending on where you are in the life cycle of owning or in, is going to be measurable by the success you've had in the past. So I have a question. Who in the audience has been in Equipo for more than 5 years? Okay, so the majority of the room. So by just looking at the booking pace that you have, the historical trends you've seen over the past 5 years in your business, that you have a general idea, or maybe better than a general idea, of what your fixed costs are and your variable costs are going to be. And those are going to go up and down depending on how much you market, how much you don't, how much you sell direct, how much you don't. And so what we try to look at is really where we are in our business flow month to month to determine where we think the measurement of profitability can be during the year. So it could be based on certain times of the year, it could be based on other factors. I think what Marty was bringing up was a really good point about fixed and variable costs. And if you continue to do all the things that you want to do with your end that drive success with the guest experience, then you'll have a lot of success with the profitability. But maybe you want to address the break-even part of that, John.
Yeah. So with the break-even part, raise your hand if you know what your break-even point is for your property. Okay. I expect only a few hands, so thank you very much. The break-even point, Marty had brought up fixed and variable costs. So let's just define that. I know most of you were in for Terry, so you already got a great education on this. But fixed costs are things like your mortgage payment, your utilities that aren't going to really fluctuate year to year much. It includes costs that you spend with your staff, but then you also have, variable costs. Like, what are some examples of your variable costs?
credit card fees, food, some utilities.
Yep, that fluctuate a lot. I would put them in there. But also you need to take into account things like your staffing, the supplies that you need, and most importantly, I think that a lot of people forget is yourself. The time and money that you need to pay yourself to make this lifestyle worth it. Okay? Because this is, it's a lifestyle, it's not a job. When you're an entrepreneur in any business. So putting that in there and taking all of those costs and figuring out what is it, the way I look at it is, what is the percentage of the inn what's my occupancy that I think I'm going to hit this year? And as you're in it for year after year after year, you kind of get a better idea of that. Now COVID threw us for a loop, of course. But if you know that you're a property that is on average 60% occupancy for the year, you can divide that by the number of rooms that you have and the revenue that you're expected to make in that time, and you can figure out, what that price is that you need to sell your rooms for. Say it's $150. Does that mean that you have to sell every room for $150, or that $150 is, the lowest point you can sell a room for? Absolutely not. But it gives you a guidepost when you are determining your pricing to help you figure out roundabout where your RevPAR needs to be profitable. And what we want to be looking at is what covers our expenses, what is our baseline that we need, and that's why we're saying figure out those fixed costs and the variable costs and paying yourself all together as one. Compare that to your occupancy, divide that out, and that's going to tell you what that is. Now, in the summertime, for me, I'll use, because I'm in Maine, in the summertime, my rooms are going to be probably 2 or 3 or even 4 times what that break-even point is for me. But in the wintertime, I may be dipping down below that. But I've actually tried to make it a personal mission to never drop below that point. For me, I'm not going to say that that's right for you or right for everybody. But you can use all that to help figure out your pricing, to know where you need to land, to just get the bills paid. And then everything else is icing on the cake. And that's why I say it's so important that you put in what you want to pay yourself into that fixed cost. And when people do this exercise, they often find that that number is a lot higher than what they anticipated. So if you haven't done that, definitely check it out. I apologize, I don't have a slide up here. We had a little mishap with the computer, and this is the only one slide we were going to have for you to actually show you the calculations, but you can stop by and I'll be happy to show it to you when we're in the booth tomorrow or something like that. But, yeah.
1 or 2 things to add on is, number one, I keep you're asking what tools do I use, and I jokingly say QuickBooks, which we do, but I also have an Excel spreadsheet, which I inherited from the previous owners, and it has our, revenue, room sold, ADR, variable costs, fixed costs, NOI, depreciation, interest, everything. We have it all the way back to 10 years, 11 years, and 3 times a year, 4 times a year, I'll update it. And now that I just closed out 2021, we did a high side, low side for 2022, because we're kind of really pushing hard on pricing. So I kind of have and how many rooms, it's an equation, right? How many rooms, how many price to get to the revenue. And I do look at that, A, when I have the time, and B, when I kind of said, okay, we've gone through, I don't know, May, we've gone through the first half of the year. How are we doing? Update QuickBooks, drop it all in, where am I tracking to where I thought I would be? Am I not? Am I under? Am I over? Ooh, do I have some more money to do a few other things versus my plan for the year? So I would say, it's kind of like the daily, we're not going to get into daily reports. You have your daily, weekly stuff you look at, and your every couple of times a month or every couple of months you look at, and then annual is your K1 and all your payout at the end of the year.
And I'll also throw in there that profitability can mean a lot of different things. And I actually had a fun conversation with my accountant as we were moving through the process of, during several stages of my ownership, when we wanted to renovate, but we knew wonderful way to not pay a ton of interest on your mortgage. I can talk about that for a long time. But, it depends on who you need to show that you're profitable to. So if you want to get a great tax return, your accountant needs to make it so that your profitability looks great so that you actually get a return, or to minimize what you owe in taxes. And this is all legal. It's not doing any, shady stuff. It's just, there's more tax laws about how to reduce your reliability over what you actually have to pay in taxes. So that's one area that you want to have some form of profitability. The second is when you work with your bank or your financial institution, they're going to want to see a certain amount of money in those accounts and what they consider profitability. So maybe your accountant suggests that you move some money around one way. And unfortunately, the third place where you want to show profitability or a lack of profitability is when it comes to insurance and lawsuits. And how you're able to move that money into places to make sure that it can't get taken from you simply because someone twisted their own ankle on your property. So there's a lot of different angles that you can look at profitability depending on what it is that you're trying to do. So, yeah.
And I think what we're talking about too is cash flow. Right? So if you have a good understanding of your cash flow, down to a week or a month, then you'll have a good sense for kind of how the business flow looks, and then where you need to set your goals for revenue, ADR, RevPAR, and all those things. And we spend a lot of time these days. We've been owning our inn for going on 17 years now. We look a lot less at occupancy and a lot more at ADR and revenue now, because we know that if we're looking there based on cash flow, how we're spending money, how we're taking money in, income and expenses, if that's being managed and reviewed properly in the tool that we use, and we have a cash flow spreadsheet that a business consultant did for us about 10 years ago, the best investment we made at that point in time in our inn, because we really had then understood what our real expenses and income were going to be week to week. So we could see, are we on track to make money? Are we on track not to make money? How do we make adjustments in how we run our business to make money? Yes.
Would you be able to share that cash flow spreadsheet with us?
I can. It's very formalized. That's the right word. So there's some work I would need to do that, but I can certainly try to do that for whoever wants to see it. It's going to have the formulas in it, but of course all my data will be out of it, and then you can just sort of plug in your information and automatically kind of tells you week to week, month to month what it's looking like. It's a really great tool. This guy did. He was a PricewaterhouseCoopers consultant that kind of came into our inn, sort of it was one of those calls that you get when somebody's trying to sell you something, and most of the time I just say no and hang up. But this one had enough interest to me that I ended up hiring the guy, and he came and spent a week with us and built that cash flow spreadsheet. So.
And I'll share a free resource for you as well. If you use any of the Google platforms and you go into Google Sheets actually has an annual budgeting spreadsheet where you just plug in numbers and you can add all of your expenses, all of your planned revenue, and it breaks it down by the month, and it just automatically does those calculations for you. So it might not be the perfect match for your business, but you know what your chart of accounts is in your accounting software. You can have basically, you need to create the same thing in your sources of revenue. You can very easily manipulate that to make it, that's a free resource. That's a template that Google already has for you. I would definitely recommend that as a good first step if hiring someone is not, in your profitability plan yet. Great. Well, Jim, I want to kind of continue with what, you just shared a tool with us that you use. We didn't talk about that tool before that, but I know that you have a couple tools that you use to make sure that you stay profitable. Can you talk about some of those?
A lot of them are based on what I was talking about, ADR revenue. So we have a revenue management system, much like the revenue management systems you would see at hotels, and it's used a lot by a variation of that is used by airlines. So if you go to an airline website, you try to book a flight, and it says it's going to cost you take all the past bookings that I've had over the past, it's been about 3 or 4 years now. It's going to look at all my historical trends, my booking pace, my future. It's going to make some guesstimates as to what my future bookings are going to look like. It takes all those things and builds into a formula, and then sends me rates automatically and puts them in my property management system. And it does that at least 3 times a day. It can change rates 3 times a day. And what it's done for my business is it's taken my ADR from roughly about $270 per room to about $345 in about a 12-month period. And it's consistent. It just continually kind of drives that higher ADR, higher ADR and the higher revenue. And it's probably the best thing I've done in the last 10 years, right? The first 10 years of cash flow thing, second 7 or 8 years was this revenue management system. And it's really worked out well. There are revenue management systems in our industry, some of which we know about. They do yield management, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But I just decided I needed something a little more sophisticated, a lot more. And so now it's a fully automated system. I can go in and change it if I want to, change the rate because I'm not feeling confident about it. But I think in the past 12 months I've changed it 5 times. 5 instances where I overridden the rate before the system came. So it's just a really great system. It's not for everybody, it's expensive. I'm just going to tell you, it's expensive. But I did a ROI spreadsheet with it through the company I use, and they told me, based on the system and how much revenue I'd be able to get from it, that the ROI is about 8 to 10 times more than what I paid for. So that's a really beneficial thing for me. That's just what I guess.
What's the name of the software company?
It's a company that maybe you've heard of. It's a company called Ideas. Ideas, just like it sounds, IDEAS. And I'm using their kind of more advanced version because I felt like I needed that to kind of get all the features that I needed and all the functionality. They also have a step-down system that's a little less expensive. I'm happy to talk to anybody afterwards about it.
And I think, we've talked about, here's another paid solution, but I think that really brings up another good point, which is regardless of the tools that you're using, whether it's to get more reservations, whether it's to make more revenue, you have to be evaluating if it's worth that cost for your business. I highly respect Jim. He's been in business a long time. He was able to share with me the condition of his property when he first bought it, and I've now been to his property, and it's, a dream. But you have to make sure that you aren't just frivolously spending money on things. You want to spend money on things that you know are having a return. Nothing in our industry, no matter what vendor tells you how wonderful their product is going to transform your business and make you money, nothing is set it and forget it. Never believe that. And run away if the salesperson is telling you that, because it's just not true. It is your responsibility to make sure that it is a good healthy investment for profitability for your business. Marty?
So if you're like me, the 6 rooms, you can only dream of having ideas. So who's more like 10 rooms or less, 8 rooms or less? Okay. You probably, it's interesting, but I doubt it would ever be needed for us for 6 rooms. But what I look at every day, so I really try to keep my finger on the pulse of the market, meaning downtown Annapolis. So my daily, weekly is, what's the traffic in Google Analytics? What's the colorized charting triptease, say new triptease, which tells me the last 7 days or 28 days, what dates we're searching for, how many times were they searching for, and if they have reservations. If you're out there, please develop a report for rooms searched and the dates they're searching for.
Dr. Richard?
And I did already. You made me a lot of promises just like 2 years ago. Anyway, but that tells me how many times people are looking for each date and how many times they booked. So it tells me the intensity, and so especially in COVID, it was like people were not looking more than 2 weeks ahead. So I hardly worried about the price beyond 2 weeks. Now it's a more normalized distribution, looking out 4 or 5 months. So I'm watching the price there. I watch what the pricing is in various days, weekdays, weekends, and just doing a Google search for downtown Annapolis. So I'm just kind of have this mental algorithm. I'm over my own ideas is data that's available to me, and at not too high of a cost. And that's how we determine the price dial up and down, which we've done a lot down in 2020 and a lot up. And by the time we got to the middle of 2021, it's like, holy smokes, you know, we went to 2-night minimum 7 days a week. We increased the prices a couple of times. We're tracking for an ADR about 18% higher 2022 versus 2021. So there's a lot of different ways. My point is there's a lot of different ways to get at it depending upon your scope and complexity of what you got.
And I will say too, you know, that this is the Cadillac system that I use. I did a lot of research when I was just sitting in front of the computer in 2020 when no one was coming through the door in March and April, which is when I started this search. And there are a lot of very good revenue management systems out there that you can use that are going to be less expensive, you know. And like I said, if you think yield management is working well for you and you're getting your revenue up and you're reaching higher levels of profitability, then go with it. But you know, I can give anybody that wants it a list of these other companies. The only question is, you know, do they support some of the property management systems we have? And we have to switch property management systems, sorry to say, to another system to allow ourselves to use this tool. So anyway, this is
How do you differentiate revenue management from yield management?
a great question. That's a great question. You want to, are we staying on topic here? Or are we going to
This is perfect. Go ahead.
No, you do it because you're the expert.
Okay. Oh, God. So the way that I look at it is yield management is, in a lot of systems, yield management is thought of as just the pricing of your rooms. And to some extent, the pricing of your packages, but yield management generally just deals with price. Whereas revenue management deals with things that are beyond price. So being able to offer amenities that are charged for, like those extra packages and stuff like that. Yield management can include things like restrictions that you put in place that make sense to get guests to stay longer, where you know you can keep guests longer. Or in some instances where you want to only, like I talked with, you know, I did a presentation on yield management once and talked about occupancy restrictions. And, you know, kind of came from the angle of we want a guest to stay with us as long as they can. That's going to be a profitable guest for us. Less work, no more check-in, you know, all that. But the gentleman came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, Scott, that doesn't work for me." And I was like, "What do you mean you don't want a guest to stay 2 or 3 nights?" And he's like, "Because we offer a restaurant and we offer a spa. And generally when someone comes and stays with us, they only eat at our restaurant 1 night a week. And they only use our spa services once. So I want our rooms to turn over because we want to get someone else new in the door to eat at the restaurant and to use the spa." And that was kind of a light bulb for me that went off of like, oh yeah, like you want guests who are staying a shorter stay because you have in essence, three thriving businesses, and your lodging property with longer guests are actually hurting your other businesses. So it made sense. And then revenue management, there's also a part of it, and we'll get to this today, is how you then reinvest that. So it's a much larger strategy from just yield management. I think yield management, what it boils down to is just money, whereas revenue management is about services, amenities, reinvesting, you know, even down to like, I don't know if your software does this, Jim, but there's revenue management software out there. I know the big flag hotels are using this that will raise and lower rates based on the weather for your local area.
Yeah, wow. Okay, doesn't do that.
Okay.
That'd be really interesting. So let me just address that question a little differently, if I could. So, and correct me if I'm wrong on your yield management, Scott. Is yield management like taking a picture of a moment in time? So when you're in your yield management tool, you're setting your rates based on, you're setting your restrictions based on that moment in time. When you think that it's going to require you to raise them or lower them. What revenue management does is it takes it to a whole other level. It says it's a dynamic world out there. It takes into account your competition and what they're doing. It looks at their rates. It says their rates are higher or lower for this particular time of the day, and it calculates where your rate should be based on that one factor. It takes into consideration, like I said before, your past ADR and your past revenue over the past few years, factors that in and calculates and suggests rates. It looks ahead to say, based on historical patterns, we believe that your future rates are going to be in this place, and then it takes that information and repurposes it back into the formula, and then adjusts rates that way. So it's like, I don't know how many factors there are, maybe 10 or 15 different dynamic factors that are always changing daily, that then it produces a suggested price to you. So it's a much more dynamic way of looking at pricing changes than anything that yield management probably is doing, and that's what makes it so powerful. I hope that helps.
It's kind of like yield management is algebra, and then revenue management is like calculus. Over here.
With revenue management, like there's other things that the whole world management area, and that's why you have to have the opportunity because there was an event that filled every place around within, an hour radius, and everything was back 1 year, and then we're hoping in the next year that revenue management is going to take it. Sometimes you have to tell us that that's not going to happen.
Right.
And so it encompasses the demand in the area, raise, mostly on the demand of them.
That's right. And also, I can put in special events into my revenue management system.
Right, yeah.
And it will take into consideration where those rates have been in that given period of time over the past couple of years and what it thinks will be in the future. And it puts that into the calculation, suggesting the
It's
rates.
almost kind of
It's
a
amazing.
power for what's going on in the area, and suggests to you where you should be, because you're going to be able to get that. And kind of the right yield part is you're kind of playing with it and making decisions.
And they're more static. They're just more static. They don't own it.
And I'll just add again, this is not a set it and forget it, because what we're talking about is artificial intelligence. They're algorithms doing this. Yet we also have this human element that happens to know what the computer doesn't know. So it, again, is not just this, set it, forget it, you're good.
When I first put the system in place, I thought I'd be overriding the system every other day. And the company trained me, let it run, just let it go. It's going to do this for you. And it took me a little while to believe it, but then when I saw that I was charging, the same night for the same room 2 years ago, and now for $300 a night, I was getting $500. You just have to trust it. Now, to Scott's point, you've always got those override capabilities. So you can always tell the system, no, I don't do it, and change it. And you can change it in 10 seconds.
And again, from a smaller perspective, like in our case, we know Navy football is going to be playing sometime September, October, November. We don't know when, and as soon as they release the schedule, the alumni are booking like crazy before I have a chance to adjust the rates. So I learned that mistake after the year. I think it was a mistake. The question coming up, I'll confess now. We'll get to your question in a minute. So I just made every weekend a 3-night minimum at the highest price until I knew the football schedule. Then I left the rest. Once I found out, then I looked at what the Marriott and other big chain hotels were. They didn't touch anything any other weekend, so fine, I'll let it all ride too. So now, September, October to Thanksgiving are just out of control. So again, there's ways you can do this if you really know your market. When you have this, you don't always need a sophisticated tool for the little guys like me. So but you use your own intelligence because you got to know the market.
Right.
Somebody had a question over there.
Yeah, there's a question over here, and then I want to take it in a whole different direction. Go ahead.
definitely saw our retreat group business decrease in 2020. It started picking up again in 2021, but it's still not back to where it needs to be. It's still not where it was. We use corporate group retreats, and that's the corporate group retreat to us is an overnight stay with more than 5 rooms. So that's the kind of groups we target. And we played around with the rates a little bit more with group retreats in the past 6 months than we had before. We were kind of, I think, underselling the price a little bit, if you know what I mean. We were just pricing it a little bit too low. And then we went in and started trying to make some adjustments to the price and got it to a place where it's not the same pricing that we're seeing with ideas for our leisure guests, but it's getting closer. And the profitability question has been sort of a little harder to kind of get our head around it, because while we know we're filling up midweek, which is what we want, and I think that's a challenge that we all have, so how do we fill up midweek, Sunday through Thursday? It was doing that for us. It was getting above a profitability threshold for us that we achieved and liked, but we don't still have it to the point where we've got it maximized and we feel like the profitability is being reached in a way that we want it to be. So it's a little bit of a challenge for us, with ideas, because we know they can do this for us. We're just probably not as far along with our group pricing as we are with our leisure pricing. We're working on that. So I'd be happy to talk more about that offline, because it is an area where we really want to see more growth from a revenue standpoint.
So one of the things that I hate about panels is that you have all these questions you want to ask and do, and then all of a sudden you end up going down a rabbit hole, and sometimes that rabbit hole is awesome, and sometimes it's like, you gotta come back. So we've talked about some things that have worked for us, and we've heard from some people, what has worked, what's working. What is something that you've done in your time as an innkeeper that was never again, avoid? I thought it was going to work, it didn't work, and I will say this, every property is different. What might work for you might not work for someone else. What didn't work for you might work for someone else. But what is your thing that sticks out as bad ideas?
Make sure I understand the question. You want us to talk about what's been a bust that has driven down our chances for profitability?
Or something that you thought was going to be profitable, that was going to be something that was going to boost you to the next level, but it just wasn't the case.
I got two. One was more like an operational thing after we took over. It was like, oh my God, we need a new website, we need new photography, let's just get this done. So I came to the first AHP in February 2018, 3 weeks after we bought the place, found a photographer, come here next week, take photos. Big waste of money. Too early. I wasn't ready. It wasn't the season. The roses weren't blooming. We completely changed what we did for breakfast. Big waste of money. Fast forward 3 years, the house was perfect inside and out. Photo shoot. A lot more money, a lot more value. Revenue side, Annapolis is also the state capital. The legislators come in the off-season, mid-January, mid-April. Great, we'll fill it up. We'll go find the consultants, the lobbyists, the legislators. Sure, they want to stay with us. Quiet place, 3 blocks to the State House. Marty cold calls, knocks on doors, sends out emails, nothing. And everybody, some of the other people are like, and they to the point where they asked us to join like a webcast and pitch it to some of the reps or the chief of staffs. The Hilton person comes on, we'll give you points, we'll give you free booze, we'll give you, I can't compete with that. So we ditched that after 1 year, but we get enough of people now in the off season. We focus on the Naval Academy parents. We really love the parents. We take care of the kids, and the parents keep coming back, same parents again and again and again. And we also then just focus on experiences. Here's what's going on. We'll keep you busy. We'll show you a great time. We do that both in social and with our positioning online. So we learned that stuff that looked attractive wasn't that attractive.
I'm going to throw one in that was kind of my big revelation, what really got me into revenue, into talking about yield management and profitability and stuff like that. is when I had first started out with my property, I distinctly remember phone calls that we were taking the last weeks in July, and I was so proud of myself because the whole month of August, a couple weeks before August even began, was 100% booked. And I gleefully told people on the phone that, I'm sorry, we are fully booked on those dates that you're looking for. Our first booking date is September 5th or something like that. And I remember just even like, now that I look back at it, how cocky I was about it. And I actually wondered, what did I actually sound like on the other end of the phone? Because I felt like I was probably bragging more than anything. But then when I started really diving into this, that's when I realized occupancy isn't the number I need to be working with. And if I'm booked in a high season when the demand is high and the supply is low, and I'm fully booked, then I'm the problem. I didn't price my rooms correctly. I should have priced higher, and I could have got more. And I remember that first August that I had my property, and thinking, man, I made $22,000 as a 4-room inn. And now August makes $38,000. So it is a big, big thing about where you place the values on numbers. Occupancy tells you nothing about revenue. Occupancy just tells you how many rooms you have full.
If you put that under the, what do you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning, that would be the exact thing that I would also say, is the first year is we need to get people in the door, we need to spend a lot, because we have a lot of money to spend on renovations. And I was at the same point of kind of happily saying, I'm sorry, we're sold out. So I think once we got over 30,000 in a month. So fast forward to this year was prices are going up. My wife would come over famously say, you know, it's like, Monday you still have 2 more rooms for the weekend. Don't worry, it'll book. She's always right, it booked. And the price a lot higher because we didn't panic anymore on price. And so I think we had like 30,000 months in a row and a $48,000 month in 2021. So exact same point.
I'd say one of the things that everybody should do now is literally go raise your rates. As long as you're measuring the results, whether it's your off season or whether it's your high season or peak season, go raise your rates, because as long as you're checking to see if those rooms are still booking in adequate time and an adequate amount of time that you feel comfortable with, whether that's, okay, that date's fully booked 2 weeks in advance, or 4 weeks in advance, or 2 days in advance, I think you're going to be shocked at what doesn't happen, which is people not coming through the door. You do not know what the price of your rooms should. After 11 years, I don't know what the price of my room should be on any given day, because I'm not holding the hand over the flame of the person making the reservation. They're deciding we want to stay with you, we want to stay in this room, and that's an okay price for us to book. Yes?
We do a pricing, kind of way ahead. We're already pricing 23, and maybe even first 6 months of 24. What is your recommendation for 23?
Yeah.
Don't do it. Why book that far ahead unless it's like some ultra premium event? Like for us with the Naval Academy, it's commissioning week, it's graduation. I will book 2023 and 2021, but it's families that have stayed with us all 4 years, so it's a different relationship thing. But why book that far ahead unless you're at a price that's, you know, beyond your wildest dreams?
Yeah. My strategy right now, and has been for the last 5 years, is I actually put pricing in my system so that I don't forget to. 2 years into advance, at the end of each quarter, I go in and I put a quarter in 2 years now. However, I only allow people to book 360 days into the future. And my reason for that is if I have people staying with me right now, I want to give them the opportunity to book the same time before they leave. That's my reason. We are out of time. However, there is one question. Go ahead and hand out those slips and start filling out your slips. If you need to leave, you need to leave. But I actually have one important question that I want to kind of get your feedback on. Not necessarily all with profit or profitability or break even or anything like that, but what is something that has changed for you in COVID for the better? What is something that you're grateful has come out of COVID for you and your business?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I can answer that question for you. You have something you want to say, Marty? Because I'm looking at me for a second.
As white as Karma would say, I'm never at a loss for words. So we learned to be flexible. We learned to flex. So in the dark ages in April and May, we joined a consortium that was making meals for the community. We got a quick $10,000 of revenue making meals for the community, but the money came from grants, and we also sold food to the Naval Academy midshipmen through the mothers. We built a ton of relationships, again, with Naval Academy parents. It was a very localized situation, but we also learned to flex. We completely changed how we operated inside the house, and we found that actually led to a lot of efficiencies that we didn't do before that actually made it running. Now that we scaled up in the year afterwards, it made it a lot easier to manage, because in the past, like, this is the way we're running the house, and that's it. And we changed. We learned to flex and pivot a lot.
Yeah, I guess I learned that, the guests are going to be guests the same way they've been before, with the exception of the fact that we're getting younger guests. We're getting into age demographic that's now in the 25 to 45 range. And a lot of those folks are coming because they want unique experiences. That's what they're looking for. And so I think that trend's going to continue, but I think what we try to do is implement other tools, these are marketing tools, to target our database of guests, which we now have over 12,000 in our database, to their particular interests, to their particular lives, to their particular, not so much the amenities in the room, but what they want to do when they're there. Because a lot of these younger guests that we're seeing, spending a lot of time outside, they're wanting to go to wineries more and so on and so forth. They want the experience, right? So we're spending a lot of time, or we did spend a lot of time during COVID. What we learned is we need to target our guests a lot more than we do. We just can't send a big email blast out to everybody. So I think that got us thinking about, where do we need to look to find a way to do that? We've got some other tools that we're using. If anyone's interested in talking about those too.
I think, and for me, there are two things, is I felt empowered to say no to people that I would normally say no to for guests. If you know anything about me, I'm definitely on the left side of, I was happy my business was shut down by our governor, because I don't know that I could have made the call myself. Someone made the call for me, but it was what I felt was the right choice for everybody at that point. You can agree or disagree, that's fine. But it also made me determine, what am I willing to put up with myself? What am I willing to have my staff put up with? And if you don't meet what we want as a guest, then you're not the right guest for us. And we can say, hey, no, we think this other place might be the right place for you. The other thing is, the guest communication side of things is, we switched to text messaging during the pandemic, and I feel more connected to my guests than I ever have. And I may never have seen them from check-in to check-out because of their own safety protocols. But the reviews that we got just about how connected we were with people, faceless doesn't mean serviceless, is what I learned. And I hope that that stays around, because nobody's coming to visit with us. They're all there for another reason. And once you take your ego out of it, I think it makes a better guest experience. So I want to thank you guys for doing this today. Thank you for being here. Please come up, ask us any questions, and I think that's the end for today.